I felt the heat of Emily's glare from across the table as she continued, her words hanging in the air. "You're unbelievable, Lena. You just had to mess everything up," she repeated, her voice dripping with disdain. My mom and dad remained silent, but I could feel their eyes on me, silently blaming me for the mishap. "Emily, I already apologized," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, fighting to keep the frustration from spilling out. "I don't know how the reservation got cancelled. I did everything right. I made sure to confirm the booking. But it didn't matter. The damage had been done, and Emily wasn't done venting." She crossed her arms, leaning back in her chair as if she had won. "Yeah, well, that doesn't help us now, does it? I swear, every time we go anywhere, it's a disaster because of you." I sank further into my seat, my face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and anger. My mom glanced at me with her usual judgmental expression, her lips pressed tightly together. She wasn't angry, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. My dad just sighed, his usual way of handling family tension by retreating into his own thoughts. I couldn't take it anymore. This was becoming my life, a constant cycle of trying to do something right, only to have it all fall apart and be blamed for it. My sister was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one everyone loved and adored. I was the one they turned to when they needed someone to blame. And it hurt. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. "Can we just enjoy the vacation, please?" I finally said, my voice trembling. "I'm sorry it didn't go as planned, but I don't need you throwing it in my face all night." Emily's eyes widened in mock surprise. "Oh, poor Lena. Always the martyr. You're the one who ruined it, and yet you act like you're the one who's been wronged. Typical." The weight of her words hit harder than I expected. I stood up abruptly, pushing my chair back with a sharp scrape against the floor. "I'm done," I said quietly, my voice shaking. "I'm done being the scapegoat. If you want to keep blaming me for everything, fine. But I'm not going to sit here and take it anymore." With that, I turned on my heel and walked out of the restaurant, the sound of their murmurs following me. As I stepped outside, I felt a rush of anger, a sharp sting of frustration, and a heavy sense of defeat. I had spent my entire life trying to please them, trying to make things work, and all I had to show for it was this moment, walking away from the family I had hoped would be different. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The cool night air filled my lungs, but the bitterness remained. For once, I had done everything right, and it still hadn't been enough. It wasn't just the reservation that was ruined, it felt like my entire role in this family had been shattered, exposed for what it was. The rest of the vacation stretched out before me, but I knew things weren't going to change. Not for me, not for Emily, not for any of us. The question was whether I was strong enough to finally stop trying to fix everything. I placed my napkin down slowly, my hands trembling, not with fear, but with fury that had been simmering for years. My voice came out low and clear, cutting through the tension like glass. "You know what, Emily? You're right. Someone should point out the facts." The table went quiet. I turned to face her fully, my tone calm but razor sharp. "Fact, the dinner reservation was confirmed. I have the email to prove it. The restaurant overbooked and tried to blame me when they couldn't accommodate. Fact, the snorkeling trip? That was your idea and your booking. But sure, let's blame me for the boat engine failing, because clearly, I control marine mechanics now too." Emily blinked, startled. For once, she didn't have a snappy comeback ready. I continued, my eyes scanning the faces of my parents. "And here's another fact, every time something goes wrong, it's easier to make me the scapegoat than to admit we're dealing with a chronic problem, one that has nothing to do with trip logistics and everything to do with how this family handles conflict." My mom shifted in her seat uncomfortably, and my dad looked like he'd rather disappear under the table. You all laugh at her digs, let her get away with twisting the truth, and I stay silent because I've been trained to keep the peace. But I'm done. If this trip is ruined, it's not because of the weather, or a button I didn't click, it's because I'm the only one here being held responsible for everyone else's frustrations. Emily opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. Don't. You've had your turn. Now I'm taking mine. Silence. I stood up slowly, feeling years of swallowed words finally rise to the surface like a tide I could no longer hold back. I came on this trip to spend time with my family, not to be your punching bag. If you all think that's my role, then maybe I don't belong at this table. And with that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving the stunned silence behind me. For the first time in my life, I didn't shrink, I stood tall, knowing I had finally spoken the truth. Whether they listened or not was no longer my problem. Emily's accusations lingered long after dinner, a sour aftertaste none of us could shake. My dad leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples like he was counting the seconds until he could escape the tension. My mom busied herself signing the check, eyes glued to the paper, clearly hoping that avoiding my gaze meant she didn't have to pick a side. I just don't see why this has to be such a mess, she said eventually, her voice heavy with frustration. Lena, these family trips mean a lot to your father and me. Why didn't you double-check the plans? I did, I replied, too sharply. My voice cracked through the quiet, drawing surprised looks from both of them. I double-checked everything, the dinner, the snorkeling schedule, the transportation. I don't know what went wrong, but it wasn't for lack of effort. Emily rolled her eyes and let out a loud, exaggerated sigh. Well, whatever you did, it clearly wasn't enough. She shoved her chair back and stood, the scrape of wood on tile making me flinch. I'm going for a walk. Maybe someone else can figure out how to salvage the rest of this trip. She walked off without a second glance. The silence she left behind was suffocating. My dad exchanged a glance with my mom, who shook her head in that tired way of hers that always meant let it go. Back in my hotel room, I lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun slowly above me. Emily's voice echoed in my head, sharp and familiar. You just had to ruin everything. This is why no one counts on you. What stung more than her words was how my parents had let them hang in the air, unchallenged. My mom's passive jab. My dad's complete lack of defense. It was like the verdict had already been handed down and I wasn't even allowed to speak in my own defense. But this wasn't new. Emily had played this game before, casting herself as the victim, making me the villain, and they always bought it. I thought about calling Lisa. She would have reminded me I wasn't crazy, that my feelings mattered. She always did. But it was late, and I didn't want to drag her into this drama, again. Instead, I grabbed my phone and aimlessly scrolled through messages. That's when I saw it. A thread from Emily, dated 2 weeks ago. The message was short but clear. Hey Lena, can you check the snorkeling thing for me? I'm buried with work and might have messed something up. I think I canceled the dinner reservation by accident too. Can you handle it? I stared at the screen, the words glowing back at me like a punch to the chest. There it was. Proof. She'd asked me to fix her mistakes. And now she was blaming me for them. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of Lisa's words pressing against me. She was right, I had spent too long hiding behind my silence, letting Emily manipulate the narrative. I didn't want to keep being the one who was always in the wrong, the one who took the fall for everything. I deserved to stand up for myself, even if it meant facing the uncomfortable truth of what it might do to my relationship with my family. After a long pause, I took a deep breath. You're right. I can't keep doing this. I'll show them the messages. Lisa sighed in relief. Good. You've got this. Don't let them make you feel small anymore. You deserve to be heard. I hung up, my heart still racing, but this time, it wasn't from anxiety, it was from a sense of determination. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but it was time to stop being the silent scapegoat in my family's drama. It was time to confront them all. I made my way back to the resort, trying to steady my nerves. When I walked into the breakfast area, the familiar tension was already thick in the air. Emily was sitting at the table, scrolling through her phone again, her eyes never leaving the screen. My parents were quiet, exchanging glances that didn't escape my notice. Mom, Dad, I began, my voice firm but not too harsh, I need to show you something. I pulled out my phone and opened the messages between Emily and the resort's concierge. I handed the phone to my mom first. She read through the messages in silence, her expression unreadable. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as she scrolled. Go ahead, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Read the whole thing. Emily's the one who dropped the ball on the reservation. She's the one who never followed through and then blamed me when everything went wrong. My mom glanced up at me, her brow furrowing, but she didn't say anything. She passed the phone to my dad. He didn't say anything either as he read through the messages. The silence stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. Emily's face paled as she finally looked up from her phone, her eyes narrowing in a mixture of disbelief and annoyance. What the hell, Lena? Are you seriously airing our dirty laundry here? Is it dirty laundry, Emily? I shot back, my voice rising. You've been throwing me under the bus for years, making everything that goes wrong my fault. It's time for you to own up to your part, for once. There was a beat of silence, and then my dad put the phone down on the table, his gaze flicking between Emily and me. Well, this is a bit of a mess, he muttered under his breath, almost to himself. Mom didn't look at me. Instead, she focused on the table in front of her, her face tight. Emily's face flushed with anger, but she said nothing. I don't care how you feel about it, I continued, my tone steady, despite the lump in my throat. This has been going on long enough. You blamed me for things that weren't my fault, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Finally, my mom spoke, her voice quiet. This isn't the way to handle things, Lena. We don't need to drag everything out in front of everyone. Maybe not, but it's the truth. Maybe you've been protecting Emily all these years, but I'm tired of being the one who always has to cover for her. My words felt like a weight lifting off my chest, but it didn't feel good. It felt necessary. Emily stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Fine, she spat. You want to make this a big deal? Go ahead. But don't expect me to make nice with you after this. I watched her storm out of the room, my heart racing. My dad didn't say anything as he looked down at his hands. The silence in the room felt deafening, and for a moment, I wondered if I'd just destroyed whatever semblance of family we had left. But deep down, I knew it was necessary. Emily froze, her mouth slightly open, a flush creeping up her neck. For the first time all week, she didn't have a ready comeback. I didn't mean it like that, she stammered. It was a joke between sisters. I thought Lena understood. My mom blinked, turning her full attention to Emily now. You canceled the dinner and let her take the blame? Why would you do that? It wasn't a big deal, Emily said quickly, her voice rising. I just didn't want to deal with everyone yelling at me if something went wrong. Lena's always so calm, I thought she could handle it. I laughed, a bitter, exhausted sound. Yeah, I handled it, Em. I handled your mistakes, your comments, and you throwing me under the bus again and again, all while everyone else laughed like it was some inside joke I wasn't in on. My dad set the phone down, his jaw clenched. That's not okay, Emily. This was supposed to be a family trip. If you can't be honest, then don't shift the blame onto someone who's done nothing but keep this vacation from falling apart. Emily's expression hardened, the embarrassment now replaced by something sharper. So what, now I'm the villain? Are we really doing this? You made yourself the villain, I said quietly. I was just tired of playing the fool. Silence settled over the table again, but this time it wasn't mine to carry. I looked at my parents, both staring at their plates, processing. Emily sat stiffly in her seat, arms crossed, eyes darting toward the window like she wished she could disappear into the sea. I stood up, gently placing my napkin beside my plate. I think I've lost my appetite, I said. I'll see you back at the villa. As I walked away, I felt my pulse thudding in my ears, adrenaline still buzzing in my veins. But beneath the storm of emotion, there was a calm settling in my chest, a quiet sense of liberation. For the first time in a long time, I hadn't swallowed my voice. I'd chosen to speak. And for once, they had heard me. Emily's face flushed deep red, and for a brief second, she looked genuinely shaken. But true to form, she quickly donned that wide-eyed, wounded expression she'd mastered over the years, the same one that always managed to smooth things over in her favor. "Dad, come on," she said, voice trembling just enough to sound fragile. "You know how easy it is to read too much into a text." I wasn't blaming Lena. I was just venting. It's been a long week. It was all just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I repeated, my voice sharp with disbelief. "You've spent the entire trip making snide remarks, treating me like the family screw-up, and now suddenly it was all just venting?" "Girls," my mom said quickly, lifting her hands like she could wave the tension away. "Let's not turn this into something ugly." "It's not ugly, it's honest," I snapped, refusing to look away from Emily. And for once, I'm not letting her spin the story to make herself look like the victim. Emily's mask faltered. Her smile wobbled, and her gaze shifted to my dad. "I didn't mean to make it worse," she said softly. I was stressed. And yeah, maybe I said things I shouldn't have. But that doesn't mean I don't care about this trip, or about all of us being together." My dad placed the phone down on the table, his expression unreadable as he looked between us, first at me, then at Emily, then at my mom. "Beth," he said in a low voice, "I think we've been blind to what's really been going on." My mom's brows knit together. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he continued, "Lena's been carrying the blame for things that were never hers to begin with. And we let her. Because it was easier than facing the real problem." The table went silent. Even the usual background hum of clinking plates and laughter seemed to fade. My mom parted her lips to respond but stopped short, glancing at me with a look I couldn't place, confusion, maybe, or realization. Maybe both. "Lena," she said, her tone surprisingly gentle, "why didn't you ever say anything?" A dry laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Would it have mattered? Every time I tried, you brushed it off. Or worse, you sided with Emily. What difference would speaking up have made? For a long second, no one said a word. Then I saw something shift in my mom's expression, an unfamiliar crack in her usual calm. Regret. Maybe even guilt. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The words were small, barely audible over the clatter of dishes in the background, but they hit harder than I expected. After all these years, I didn't realize how much I needed to hear them until I finally did. Emily squirmed in her seat, her eyes flickering between me and our parents. "Look, I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she said, her voice quieter now. "I messed up, okay? I'm sorry, Lena." I studied her face, unsure whether her apology came from a place of honesty or just damage control. But for once, it didn't matter. I wasn't here to make her change. I didn't need her to validate me. The truth was out in the open, and that was enough. The walk back to the hotel was unusually quiet. The distant crash of waves echoed through the stillness as each of us seemed lost in our own thoughts. My dad walked beside me, hands stuffed into his jacket pockets. A few paces behind, my mom and Emily murmured to each other in low voices. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't carrying the entire burden alone. That weight, the one I'd grown so used to bearing, felt lighter now. But the relief came with a deep, quiet exhaustion. Speaking up had drained me more than I'd expected. And though part of me felt vindicated, another part kept wondering, would anything really change? Or would this just be another brief flicker of truth, destined to fade back into silence like so many times before? I stayed quiet for a moment, the weight of her words slowly sinking in. It was hard to believe that after all these years, after everything I'd been through, she was finally acknowledging the truth. Maybe it wasn't everything I wanted to hear, but it was something. It felt like a small step in the right direction. "I appreciate that, Mom," I said, my voice still quiet, but a bit softer than before. It's it's been a long time. I've spent so many years feeling invisible in this family. And I didn't even know how to ask for what I needed. She nodded, her eyes glistening slightly. I know, honey. I've always known, but I guess I just didn't know how to fix it. Or maybe I didn't want to face it. I see now that I've failed you, and I'm sorry for that. The words were simple, but they held so much more than just an apology. They felt like a moment of truth that I had been waiting for, even if I didn't realize how much I needed it until now. I don't expect things to change overnight, I said, swallowing the lump that was trying to form in my throat. But I'm glad you're finally seeing it. She took my hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. I'll try harder, Lena. You deserve better than what we've given you. I'll do better. For the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this wasn't the resolution I had imagined all those years ago, but it was a start. It was a chance for me to finally be seen, for the weight of being the scapegoat to lift, if only a little. I hope so, I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. I really do. We sat in silence for a while, the room quiet except for the sound of the ocean waves crashing against the shore. It felt peaceful, but there was still so much left unsaid. But for the first time, I wasn't carrying the weight alone anymore. That quiet resolve carried into everything I did. At work, I spoke up more confidently in meetings, no longer second-guessing my input. With friends, I set clearer boundaries and stopped making myself smaller to avoid conflict. Even small things, like saying no when I meant it, or letting calls go to voicemail when I needed space, started to feel like victories. Emily kept her distance at first, maybe unsure how much space I needed. But the next time we saw each other, at a family dinner for my dad's birthday, there was something different in the way she spoke to me. She asked how I was doing and actually listened when I answered. There were no backhanded comments, no cheap shots masked as jokes. Just effort. I didn't let my guard down completely, but I allowed room for things to grow. When she passed me the mashed potatoes with a quiet, "These need your magic touch," it wasn't a jab, it was her awkward way of extending peace. And that time, I accepted it. My mom has been more attentive too. She sends me articles she thinks I'd enjoy or checks in with a "thinking of you" text. They're small gestures, but they mean something. Maybe she saw how much I'd been carrying all these years, and maybe, just maybe, she was ready to carry some of it too. But more than anything, I'm proud of myself. Not for winning some argument or standing up to the family, but for finally showing up for me. I've learned that boundaries don't have to come with shouting matches or ultimatums. Sometimes, they just start with a quiet decision: I won't let this continue. And once you make that decision, everything changes. At work, the shift was almost immediate. I began asserting myself more, saying no to tasks that weren't mine, speaking up when my input was dismissed, and finally owning my accomplishments without shrinking into the background. They were subtle changes at first, correcting someone when they gave my colleague credit for my work or actually saying, "That was my idea," instead of letting it slide. But those small acts of self-respect started to snowball. My boss took notice. My coworkers started treating me differently. And eventually, I noticed too, I was walking taller, speaking clearer, and no longer apologizing for taking up space. Lisa, true to form, was my biggest fan through it all. One afternoon over lunch, she lifted her glass of iced tea and declared, "To Lena 2.0, the version who doesn't take crap from anyone." I grinned, clinking my glass against hers. "Work in progress, but thanks." She shook her head. "No, seriously. You've already arrived, and it suits you." Family-wise, things were still layered. Emily and I weren't having heart-to-hearts every week, but our conversations felt less loaded, more honest. My mom still slipped into old habits, like when she asked me to coordinate yet another family event, but this time, I pushed back gently but firmly. "I'll help where I can," I said, "but I'm not leading the whole thing." That's Emily's lane this time. She blinked, surprised at first, but eventually nodded. "Okay. That's fair." And just like that, something loosened. A pressure I hadn't even realized was pressing on me began to ease. One evening, I found myself sitting on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the last light dip below the horizon. And for the first time in ages, I didn't feel restless. I thought about everything that had led me here, the years of biting my tongue, second-guessing myself, bending to keep the peace. That girl still lived somewhere inside me, but she didn't steer the ship anymore. Now, I was the kind of woman who held her ground. Who drew lines and honored them. Who didn't wait for validation from the people who had never truly seen her in the first place. And that kind of peace? It didn't come from fixing other people. It came from finally choosing myself. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us share more powerful stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next chapter.